All right, our next main tissue type is muscle tissue, and there are three types of muscle tissue, and we're going to look at each one. And so I've got a cartoon picture here for you, and I put one in your notes. So we've got skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. So you can see through these pictures, there's a little bit different from each one. So these are kind of more branched off, look a little scattered among one another. These are long, skinny ones. And then these have what we call taper ends. And that's what we're going to be looking at each one of those. So let's begin with the skeletal muscle. So for skeletal muscle, it has to be attached to a bone because it's going to help pull on bones to help us move those bones, and they are always striated. So when we look at it on the microscope, and I don't know if you can tell on the video, but you'll be able to see it in lab, it's got these little striations that are going on, and when we get to chapter 10 we'll talk about what's causing these bands, those striated bands. It's also voluntary. Voluntary means that you actually have control of that. For example, if you are asked to volunteer, you have control whether or not you're going to raise your hand or not. That's a skeletal muscle. And we draw cells as circles, but skeletal muscle cells are actually very long, tube-like, cylindrical, and then they have many nuclei. There's lots of nuclei per muscle. So we normally think of a cell just having one nucleus, but nuclei is just a plural for nucleus. So skeletal muscle have a bunch of nuclei. So that's kind of a difference between them. So they're long, cylindrical, they are striated, they're voluntary, you control them. All right, let's look at we're looking at that tissue. In lab, where will we see that? Well, we'll see it on the muscle mannequin that we've got. So if this gets tagged, or I should say when it gets tagged, don't put that's just muscle tissue, because remember there's three different types of muscle tissue. This is skeletal muscle tissue on this mannequin. Okay, and then the other one would be on our eyeball, and our eyeball's got two different types, so you can see two labels here. I'm talking about here. There's actually 6 muscles that are coming into your eye here, and so the ones that are attached to your eyeball here, your sclera, the white part here, that's going to control whether or not you can look up, look down, and you do control that side to side, and it is connected to a bone. So here and then on there would be our 2 models that you would see in lab. All right, our next type is cardiac. Let me scoot this over just a little bit for you can see. Gonna have to move that over for we can see a little bit. All right, so there are 5 characteristics. Of course, it's going to be cardiac means heart. It's going to cover the walls of our heart. They're also striated, so I don't know if you can see these little striations going on in here. Going on like that, striated. Instead of being nice and stacked like the skeletal muscle, they seem to branch off in different areas, so that's a nice characteristic of them. And then they have something called intercalated disc, and that's important here. So on the microscope, I want you to look for these. It's almost like someone has taken a check mark and done that, gone like that. And those actually, you can see them really well on my little cartoon here. That separates the cells. And you'll notice this is one cell here, and these cells are only one nucleus, so they're not multinucleated, but they're also involuntary, meaning you don't control your heart. You can't say heart stop beating, heart start beating, etc. So they are striated, but they have a special thing called intercalated disc. You can spell disc with a K or you can spell it with a C. It doesn't matter. It's just the British English way to spell it. So intercalated disc are those little separation points, and under the microscope that's what you're going to look for at the cardiac. Now cardiac's pretty easy to know where you're going to find it. You're going to find it surrounding your heart. Okay, surrounding your heart here is cardiac muscle. Please again, don't just put muscle, cardiac muscle tissue. All right. And then we have smooth muscle. Well, the rest of your organs will have smooth muscle. And so smooth muscle just kind of looks smooth under the microscope. It looks like this, just kind of nice and wavy. Under the cartoon things, we say it has tapered ends. Can you see how the ends are kind of flattened off? You can't really see that under the microscope so well. If we had a really high-powered microscope, you'd be able to see it. But they are not striated. Not striated. And they are involuntary. You can't tell your stomach, hey, start digesting that donut I just ate. So you don't have any control. The only one that you have control on, the only one that is voluntary, is going to be the skeletal muscle. So that's smooth muscles. Well, let's see where we find smooth muscle. And so the models that we'll be using in lab would be your stomach, that muscle that's going to help churn your food, etc. So again, muscles are for movement. That's the key thing. They're not liners, they're movement. So that'll be what helps move the stuff in here. So this is smooth muscle. Now here, this one's cardiac here, but the arrow is pointing up here in your blood vessels. And so in your blood vessels, your blood has to move. And so we're going to see that that's going to be smooth muscle in that as well. And then we already saw skeletal muscle up here, but here, controlling the dilation of your eyes, we're going to see smooth muscle as well. So we've got smooth muscle here, we've got smooth muscles up here in the blood vessels, and then on your stomach or other organs that need movement. Alrighty, that will conclude our muscles.